You're listening to Gamers Wanted, a podcast where we talk to gamers about how gaming influenced their lives. And I'm your host, Derek. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being on Gamers Wanted, Adrian. Introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, my name's Adrian Gutierrez. I actually have a background in science, so I got my undergraduate in genetics. Wanted to go to med school, got into a car accident, plans changed. Got an opportunity to go into marketing. I've been in it since then, and now I've transitioned into actually being involved in games again. Started out gaming when I was really young. Obviously, I had two older brothers. Got a lot better than them very quickly to where I stopped playing with them. It led to arguments if I did. So I remember starting out and playing Super Mario on the Super Nintendo, then backtracking to the NES and playing. It's this Cobra. I feel like it's a Cobra 6 game or something like that, where you're just two guys on a side scroller just shooting your way through a level. We never did finish that because one of my brothers would always rage quit and you had to do 2-player. But the games I really grew up on were Fire Emblem. So we would get the English dub versions coming over from Japan before it became a big thing in the States. And then playing World of Warcraft and Call of Duty and just Halo. I remember so many friends coming over. My older brothers, they're 4 years older than I am, that came over and we'd just have Halo tournaments. So I've been gaming since I was little, and I got back into it as a career finally after a kind of wayward journey.
What was it about gaming that caught your interest?
For me, and I had this conversation actually with my mother last night, so it's a little weird. But for me, it was the ability to be a little bit older. And when I say that, I mean, whenever I played, it didn't matter how old I was, or how young I was. It just mattered my skill level. So it was a great equalizer. So I could just focus on proving myself to my gameplay. And it allowed me to be really competitive. It allowed me to just kind of step into what it meant to be at that level of trying to get better at something rather than just playing a game normally for fun.
How did your parents feel about gaming when you were younger?
Whew. So like I said, this was a conversation I just had with my mother, and she absolutely hated it, right? She's of the generation that everything was outside, and I balanced it fairly well. I just didn't play games 24/7. I made sure I went outside, but she absolutely hated it. My dad, though, once he understood that I wasn't just playing to play, but I was playing because I wanted to get better at something. Like I said, every time I play a game, I always try to look at the avenue of how can I work on this one thing consistently over time to just get better at it over and over again. Once he saw that I had that mentality about it and I wasn't just endlessly staring at a screen, for entertainment purposes solely, he got behind it. Unfortunately, he passed right before I got married. So and I got married at 19, but he passed right before that. So I've been gaming without that influence for the past 6-7 years.
So where does gaming fit in your adult life?
Like I said, I'm in a career right now where I support predominantly gamers. So I was at Mobalytics, that they built a platform out for just full on analytics of your gameplay for League of Legends. They work with a lot of pro teams, and they open up the product to just everyday players to figure out their weaknesses and their strengths, and how to address those and get better over time at it. That opportunity opened up to where I am right now, which is a brand new startup that's been very successful for the past few months. I'm liking where it's going, but right now I'm working with content creators, specifically streamers that are trying to go part-time, full-time. We've had some good success. We're building some case studies around it right now, and it's been awesome getting back into it and being able to support hundreds of people wanting to pursue their passion of turning their game streams into a career, versus just focusing solely on myself. It's an order of magnitude kind of thing for me.
Does your wife support your love for gaming?
My wife does. Again, so when I was a kid, we traveled so much. My parents were missionaries. So we grew up in I grew up in South America once we left the States when I was around 10, 11. And I came back to the States at about 17. So during that whole entire time, gaming was really all that I had. My brothers went into the military, so it was just me and my mother and my father for a bit. So gaming was all that I had. That's how I connected with people. That's how I honestly like stayed connected to like America, like understanding what was going on there, the culture. Even taught me how to like be really proficient with like communication with other people as well. Um, and kind of took me away from being like that nerdy homeschooled kid that didn't know how to talk to anybody. But with that being said, during that time, I got involved in World of Warcraft very heavily, as well as Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2, and I was able to build a power leveling business, even though it's against terms of service in World of Warcraft. That gave me really good income, and then I was able to be really competitive as one of the raiders and get into like a sponsored guild. And then I started like building up characters and selling them, as well as like competing in Modern Warfare, like in like a online major player battles, like major gaming battles. I forget the specific name. So I drew enough income to where I had a really nice nest egg, and this is why my wife really supports it. Is I was able to pretty much purchase. I purchased the engagement ring. I paid for a good portion of our wedding, everything like that, based off what I did with gaming. So she already saw the validity of it, and now she's gotten into gaming a little bit herself. She mainly plays like Destiny, Destiny 2, and Mario Kart. So she's gotten there.
So, for the parents that still feel like gaming is a waste of time, what type of advice would you give to them?
This is a question I actually get frequently because my wife has an incredibly large family, and a lot of them are younger. And, they're growing up in a different era than, even you and I did, that gaming was still kind of on the fringe. It was barely becoming like a very major source of entertainment, very still on the fringe of like socially acceptable. But now they're coming up, and every kid, is playing Fortnite. Every kid is playing Minecraft. Every kid is, just building their whole entire entertainment around that instead of TV. And this is something that her cousins and her aunts and uncles ask me all the time. And I always tell them, like, there's two things. If you're serious about wanting to support your kid, I mean, there's definitely a career path for them now. It's only going to get bigger. It's only going to get more well defined, more supported. But there's something you got to look out for is if your kid is playing games just as an entertainment source and nothing else, and they're doing that endlessly and they're letting other things slip in their lives, like relationships, with their friends, with their family, whomever, as well as like their grades and everything else like that. Their other priorities in life, that's a bad sign. If the kid is able to focus on, those other areas, maintain them, maybe not have that be the sole, focus of, what they're doing. But then when they're playing the game, they're not just playing to play, but they're playing the game with something in mind, with a goal in mind. I always tell people, if you want your kid to succeed at anything, and especially with gaming, whenever they're playing, they have to love the game, but they also have to want to improve at the game. So when they're playing, they have to be practicing something. That's really the difference that you see with the kids that went to like the Fortnite competition and everything like that. They didn't just play Fortnite to play Fortnite. Every time they played Fortnite, they came in, they're like, okay, I want to get better at this. I want to get better at that. And they just continually did that over and over and over. They had a goal in mind. And that's why they are as good as they are versus the kid that just plays Fortnite over and over again and blames lag or blames the controller for dying, So
Because of the freedom that gaming gave you to compete, regardless of your age, do you agree that kids should be able to play online freely with adults?
That's tough. Like I said, I have a son. He's almost 2 years old, and he absolutely loves watching me play. He's so enamored, like when I'm playing video games and the little time that I do now, as well as even when I'm working. So like it's definitely something you can't avoid because it's such an equalizer. Like it just doesn't matter who you are. You can just get online and play and have access to the community. I think if you're a parent and your child is heavily involved in a gaming community or game where they're actively talking with other people and engaging with them, you have to be the responsible party there. The other person is not going to police themselves because of anonymity that is granted to them by these platforms for the most part. And also as the low barrier of entry, if they get banned, they can just go through a VPN, get on a different account, and then nothing happened. So it's very much on the parent to monitor what they're doing. And there's a story that I was talking to one of our community managers about a while back. And she told me, because I was thinking about this, I'm like, is it a good for like our content? Is it good for us to try to approach children that are in the space that are thinking of like doing content creation, because they're producing pretty unique content that reverberates across audiences because they've grown up in this culture more than I have. Um, and one of the things she told me was that there's a kid that was streaming a while back, and he experienced that toxicity, people on his stream, just bullying him incredibly well, like just phenomenally, out of proportion, like it shouldn't have happened. But instead of that kid quitting, he came back, and when he came back, all these major streamers, like I think it was like Pool Shark and a few others, just rated him and drew viewership his way. Um, and with that, it gave that kid like that push to be like, I want to keep on doing this. And then his dad got involved, and now his dad like monitors his stream, makes sure that nothing comes across, that's toxic to the kid, to take away from his love of like playing the game, creating content, entertaining people. And he's doing quite well. So I wouldn't steer people away from it per se. I would just say, as a parent, you have to be involved, because of people just taking stuff too far. They don't monitor themselves. And the toxicity is always going to be there in some shape or form. You know, as I said, most my brothers in the military, most of my family's in the military too. I mean, like sometimes it's just normal people. Like they say stuff, they don't really mean it. It's just kidding around. That doesn't always come across, in communications that well when you don't know the person.
Do you feel like multiplayer was the initial trial grounds for how people act now on the internet?
Whew, that's a solid question. I think it was a good proving ground. Yes, I do. I think it was what you see in social media now, that it's not as new as it used to be. That all the barriers kind of come down and people try to be like more authentic. Whenever you're playing in multiplayer, like you really see people unfilter themselves because again of the anonymity. And now that there's so many people in the world, so many people on these social media platforms, um, everything that you see is through the filter that they want you to see, right? If you approach, what I grew up in with people like in multiplayer and like Modern Warfare 2, half those people aren't who they say they are, right? In the
Right.
same way, social media, everything that you post on there is filtered through to make it look like you're living the best life possible. When in reality, I mean, it's not. It's just the moment you chose a capture of like the 30 hours of crap you're going through.
So, is there anything that can be done to improve the toxicity online, or is it just the nature of the beast?
You know, I don't want to say it's the nature of the beast because there's always a solution. There's always something you can do to combat it. But I think that solution hasn't been found yet. Like I said, there's such ease of access into getting back into the communities that it's incredibly hard to really hit someone where it hurts, in the sense of like, even if you ban someone's account like that they've spent 10,000 hours on, they're probably just going to come back with a new account, right?
Right.
It doesn't really hurt them that much. um I really think, like, to combat it is obviously a little bit more education, having people understand, that you it's just you we're getting to the point where we're just all so interconnected that you can't, devalue relationships like that. So I think it's a little bit more of like emotional intelligence that needs to come across with people, some education around that. And there's probably things that game publishers can do to make sure that the ease of access to get back onto their platforms isn't as easy as it is right now. But again, that would be them having to, affect their bottom dollar, which may not, be as important, in the long run for them. They rather have the money than, potentially have a better community. But as more people push for it, you see the reactions coming across and like how Twitch bans are occurring and stuff like that too.
Are there any predictions you have for esports?
Whew. And what can't you predict about esports, right? Um, I mean, you probably know this, Derek, but I could legitimately say right now that esports is going to be the predominant form of entertainment within the next, few years.
How many years do you give it?
I think by at least 2021 or 2022, it's going to surpass pretty much everything else because it's global. It doesn't as soon as shoutcasters and this is the primary issue right now. As soon as shoutcasters figure out how to actually communicate the game to people that don't know anything about it, like even if it's just very basic, to get them hyped about what's actually occurring on the screen, to understand that when you're at that level of play, when you're down like to just like 1 HP, and you have like you have like a percent to succeed and like actually survive, kill, get the win, secure it, be clutch. When they understand how to convey that to someone that understands nothing that's happening on the screen, then it's just going to take over completely. Right now, you already see it like start like taking over, like in the sense of like if you look at like League of Legends finals, like taking over viewership of like the NFL like Super Bowl and the NBA finals. To the point like I love the NBA. My wife's family has all played like college ball as well, and so like I've loved watching it. I love going outside playing, to the point where like last year I was choosing like the League of Legends like gameplay over watching like the finals, because I kind of already knew who was going to be in the finals. It did surprise me at the end of the day when like the Raptors snuck their way in, but you already see that trend occurring. So that's probably my number one prediction, is that the main source of entertainment for like sports is going to be esports. Whether or not that's going to be a mixture of them, or if it's just going to be one predominant one, we have to see. Because Dota 2 has always been around. CSGO has been around for a while. League of Legends is really pioneering that field. Fortnite is as well. Overwatch is kind of faltering, to be honest, but there's so much investment there that they have to make it work, right?
Right.
So that's like my number one prediction, is that esports will be the predominant like form of entertainment worldwide, within like the next few years. Like by 2022, I think it's going to be consistently higher than pretty much any other regular sports we have, because it doesn't require you to really like be super engaged, like in the sense of like having to understand everything about basketball, or having to understand everything about football, and having like that super duper loyalty to just that one sport. And it doesn't have an age barrier, right? Most people drop off from watching sports once they get older, and even like people in like younger as well. So it just has wide span demographics for their audiences. Number two, I really think the support structure around it is just going to continue to grow, so that the money in there is going to, I think it's going to create a little bit of a bubble. I think you're seeing that right now with how much investment is going into there. But once that settles, it's going to be a really good industry to get in, whether or not you're trying to be a professional gamer inside of it, or whether or not you're trying to be like on the support side, on the operations, being in finance, accounting, marketing, sales, whatever. I think it's going to be a really good thing. And I think a lot of people are going to be able to be like, oh, I'm in a passionate, field that I love because it's around gaming. Um, and number three, I really think that esports probably has the best opportunity to finally translate what happens in Europe. Like when you look at football, and by football, I mean soccer,
Okay.
where they have academies from where they're really young all the way up to whether or not they're actually going to get into like a pro league. I think that's probably going to happen with esports, where we're going to be able to start having like programs catered around kids that are showing really good promise, especially since there's still kind of like that notion that you're really good at games from young age until like you hit like 25. I honestly think that that's bullcrap. I think Faker really shows it. And I still play really well too. So maybe I'm a little bit biased there. But I think you're going to start seeing like those academies type stuff, where people are going to, like, kids are going to start getting scouted. And they're going to have a pipeline, to explore into, having this be a legitimate career. I don't really think you can cap out with the amount of games and the ability for pretty much everyone to get on a PC, to get on Xbox, to get on a PS4, what have you, and really be competitive at it. I mean, it's so much higher. The potential is so much higher than basketball, football, soccer, golf, hockey. You don't have to have the physical attributes. You don't have to be 6'5", like you can just be laid up in bed and, end up being one of the better players. There's a guy in League of Legends that's a challenger that plays on his laptop with like the little red dot, from like the old school days, when you're like in middle school and you're borrowing a laptop from like the computer tray. He plays with that. A
Wow.
League of Legends challenger who's like less than a percent or half a percent of the whole entire, like millions of players does that. That's it's going to be huge for people.
How can other people connect with you online?
Um, yeah. So my socials go by a gamer, like I go by a gamer tag that I've had since I was a kid. It's molecular. It's at molecular ASG. On LinkedIn, it's just Adrian underscore like Adrian hyphen Gutierrez. And I work at Pipeline GG. I actually work with a former League of Legends pro, Stephen Ellis, who goes by Snoopy. A lot of people know him, and I work with another really big one of our co-founders is Stone Mountain 64, really big streamer out there, known for like his commander voice, and his like YOLO series. So I mean, that's how you can connect with me. I'm pretty wide open for the most part. I work remote, so I'm always by my computer.
Well, thank you, Adrian. We loved having you on Gamers Wanted. Have a good day.
It was awesome being here. Thank you, Derek, for the opportunity.
You've been listening to Gamers Wanted. If you want to share your story on how gaming has influenced your life, please contact us. We'd love to have you on the show. And if you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to like it or share it.